Good afternoon and welcome back to the main stage. Now we're going to welcome on stage all the speakers from the previous block. So can you please put your hands together for Dave Woestenborghs, Suzanne Daniels and Shannon Deminick. And joining them on stage, asking the questions today, we have Alice Purichicha, or you're going to actually pronounce that for me.
It's fine.
And yeah, big round of applause.
So I've got a bunch of questions here that you guys have asked through the app, but if we have more time and if you have more questions, you're really inquisitive today, Emma is going to be doing some run-throughs with a microphone. So let's take it from the top. I'm not the only one who noticed that you actually stole Todd Howard's catchphrase with "it just works." So the first question is, referring to the statement, if you could use Examinex in your Umbraco instance, it will just work. Would this be true for Umbraco 8 as well?
Yes, correct. Yeah. It supports on Umbraco 8 and 9. An Umbraco 10 release will be next week, probably. But yeah, absolutely. So there's a caveat to that. Like I said, if you are using like leucine APIs, or if you cast directly outside of the examine abstraction, then you're going to have to do some different things. But if you're just using the examine API abstraction, it's a drop-in replacement. You don't have to change anything. And it works with 8. Yeah.
Short and sweet. Another question is also about your talk, Shannon. Can Umbraco work with Solar Search?
Yeah, well, eventually. Examinex supports Azure Cognitive Search. I'm halfway through implementing it for Elasticsearch. And then after that, we'll be with Solar Search. So there's different price tiers with all of those. I believe like Azure Search and Elasticsearch are pretty similar in price points. But Solar Search is definitely cheaper. But it offers way less features. But it's definitely way cheaper. But yeah, hopefully this year, all 3 of those things will be supported with Examinex.
All right. And how would Examinex work with PDF indexing? Would it be the same as media items?
So out of the box, Examinex with Azure Search just scrapes all your PDF files, puts it into text, and then it chucks it into a field called content. And then you can just search on it. So it's very similar. So there's an Umbraco package to analyze PDFs already for leucine, which will extract the same text and put it into content. But you don't need to install that package with Examinex. It just does it. So it's not just PDFs. It's all Office documents. It's XML documents. It's CSVs, everything. It'll extract that text and put it into the index. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Suzanne, the next one is for you. Can you tell us more about space? The 5 things that make developers happy. You didn't have time in your talk, so I think people were curious.
Oh yeah, I'm going to explain like the whole paper in 2 minutes. No, that's just a joke. So a while back, if anybody remembers, but I think 3 years ago, there was some paper put out about developer effectiveness, and that was more on the business side. So then at some point they dug a bit deeper and they figured out, okay, but what actually makes a developer productive? So it turns out that there were like 5 specific things. So that is like satisfaction, well-being, performance, the A thing. Collaboration, community, and efficiency and flow. So and A is activity. Sorry. So each of these elements have specific things which you might want to look at. So for instance, if you would look at your developer effectiveness. A lot of people look, for instance, at productivity. They look at activities. That is a count of things that somebody does. That can go up, but it doesn't tell anything about is it is there any quality there? And how's the person doing? So what is the well-being? So if you see somebody skyrocketing in the activities, and you would say, well, productive, but the person is running into a burnout, then you have a huge problem, because at some point, the quality will go back, the demotivation, there will be demotivation, the person will have a burnout, it will be like totally unproductive, it will be unhealthy and unsafe. So that is maybe not the right way. So it's important to at least look, they advise to at least look at 3 of these, these 3 categories and combine that to look at how our developers actually doing. I think it's a brilliant thing. It's fairly new. It was, I think, released last year, beginning of last year. But there's a lot of things in there which like make sense. For instance, what I mentioned, like the onboarding, it has a huge, huge impact. Because why? Because if you look at satisfaction and well-being, and being happy is not about are you smiling and whistling when you go to work. It is about, does my work matter? Do I feel good at what I do? Am I confident? So all these things happen at various phases throughout your career. When you get hired, you get onboarded, then you have to collaborate. You have to build knowledge. Knowledge sharing is a very important one. Well, now I am practically giving away the whole research thing, but so all these things combined, I think it's a good thing. We're learning more and more about this and getting wiser. And that's a good thing, because there will be millions more developers in the following 10 years. And if we continue to not be good at developer experience and developer happiness, then, well, it will be maybe a lousy job at some point. It doesn't make sense, right?
Do you have any advice for maybe people, managers, or other developers to implement in order to increase their developer happiness, and maybe how would that be related to Backstage?
So yeah, it's important to identify what the points of friction are. So internally at Spotify, we have the AngSet, which is a survey we send out, where we ask a lot of questions about how people perceive working at Spotify, and that gives us a lot of insights. And there's other surveys we do as well. It doesn't really matter how you get the data, but find out what is making points of friction, what makes people unhappy, and start improving there. One of the things that you could do is look at a tool like Backstage, which is the platform to build your developer portal on top of. And because you can build it yourself, you can choose which challenges you want to address first. So is it internal collaboration? Well, insights is very important. Sharing knowledge is very important. So those are 2 things that come to mind. And that will also, for instance, do you want to change your culture and do maybe more inner sourcing? Well, then you also need these elements. So yeah, in the end of the day, doesn't matter what you do, but at least do something. And Backstage might help.
I see. Dave, how and where are you solving conflicts between the build release and Umbraco Cloud updates?
Yeah, for now, we have a PowerShell script that just checks if there has been an update at Umbraco Cloud, and then we stop our release. And I'm looking into making, if there has been an update at Umbraco Cloud, to update our code by making a pull request, so we can merge it immediately and roll out the release as well. So, does that answer the question?
And Emma, I think there's a follow-up question here.
Apologies, sorry. If there is a new Umbraco version, then what do? Do you just fail the build?
Umbraco, if they do an update now with version 9, they just update the NuGet references in the project file. So it says Umbraco 9.5.2 instead of 9.5.1. And I have those references in my project as well. So I just check all of them, Umbraco CMS, the forms, I think deploy, Cloud ID, I think there are several, and I just check if those version numbers are the same, and if they don't match up, then I say, okay, something happened at Umbraco Cloud, stop the release, otherwise we will override it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any tips for feature branches while working with Umbraco Cloud?
Yeah, we use feature branches on Azure DevOps. I haven't tried it on Cloud. It should be possible because it's also a Git repository, but I don't know what happens if you push to that. Maybe they kick off a build process or something. So I never tried it. So I don't want to break things.
Oh yes, I know. We know that one very, very well. If it works, be afraid to touch it.
I don't know. It sounds like a fun Friday night project, if you ask me. But
Ah, yeah, along with the Friday release. Before or after the Friday release?
after,
Ah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yes,
Late Friday.
yes.
obviously. Yes.
Right.
Are there any questions from the audience? No? No? Come again?
There was actually another question that you should see, I think.
They're not as synchronized. But if you have another question, you can ask it.
I don't remember the question, just 1 second. Yep, just 1 second. Sorry, I'm trying to remember my own question, because you have already answered some of the questions. I can't remember it, sorry.
We've got a human in between the app and the document that Alice is holding, so that's the point of failure. That's the friction point that
Yeah.
Yeah.
we'll iron out for next year. Oh, we've got a question over here.
There we go. We're experiencing some technical difficulties, so in the meantime, we'll take a human question.
So this is for Dave. Instead of doing the Git pull from Umbraco from the release part, could you have it in the build part and have the build listen to Umbraco Cloud, the repo there, and then just have it, continuously run and wait for a new commit from Umbraco Cloud, and then just put it, like do a Git pull and put it into the main repo. Have you tried that?
That's something you can do. You could just do it from the build pipeline, but we chose to do it from a release pipeline. So we can track which release released what, and it's easier to roll back. And also you can stop the automatic builds then easier, because you can just say, change it to manual. For example, if you're working on a big feature that cannot go live yet or something, then you can keep it locally.
Thank you.
And back to Nurek.
The next fun should come from the back. I think that's fun.
Thank you. Again, another question for Dave. I can actually see my question now. So I really like your approach. This is something that I was discussing with my colleagues here. And but I also wonder, like, your approach, does that also fix issues like database schema mismatch issues?
No. No.
Okay. Thank you.
That's still there.
There's actually another question for Suzanne in the chat. So Suzanne, do you know of any digital agencies using Backstage? And if so, how and to what extent?
So the best way to find out, because there's like really a lot of adopters, I stopped counting. I promised when we reach 100. I said I'm not going to count again until we reach 250. I think that we're almost there. So, if you go to our GitHub project, so you go to GitHub and then look for Backstage, then there's the adopters.md, and in there you can find all the public adopters. I'm pretty sure you will find some agencies using this.
Mm-hmm. But you're not aware exactly how many or how they would be using.
Oh, we have so many. Really, it's so much. There's really a lot of different companies using Backstage, and it's like the airlines and banks and governmental organizations and really, really huge developer shops, which are not public. But but also like smaller companies. So it's spread across the world. So it's hard to say, but yeah, we have a lot of different adopters. So just like look in there, and if you see a familiar name, then yeah, you can also find the contact information. But we're also happy to help you with anything. Another thing is that we have a weekly office hour. So if you're interested and you have any questions or doubts, you can always go to the office hour where you will get a more extended version of my demo, and we can literally answer any question you might have. So that might also be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, maybe this might not be very relevant, but off the top of your head, if you can think about anything, how could a smaller agency basically use it? What would it be for example, tips or starting points?
Yeah, once again, it depends on what your challenges are. So I think that's the most important thing. Is your challenge on collaboration? Is it on visibility? Is it just that you're tired of going to all these different tabs if you want to do something? Maybe you expect that you'll be expanding at some point, and that can go really, really quick. Well, if you think that that will be happening, then it's a good time to already start thinking ahead of, okay, well, let's at least put everything in a catalog, make sure that we can aggregate all the documentation. So, yeah. And also, like another thing is, and it doesn't matter what size you are, but if you're more spread out across the globe, you know, a lot of people working from home, then it's of course extra helpful to have such a tool.
Yeah, I see that. All right, last call for any questions from the audience.
I've got one, actually. I was just thinking about, sorry. So, Shannon, your package, Examine, is well loved, it's well liked. Is it well supported? Like, I know that the overheads on being an open source developer and, you know, having a project can be huge. You mentioned in your talk that there's a team of 2. Do you do it for the love? How is it for you?
Well, I've been working on Examine actually before Umbraco. Yeah. So it's probably like 13 years in the making. And I still like doing it because I still learn a lot and it keeps me engaged with the community. And there actually is active people that help out with Examine. There's definitely a few community members that definitely help out and contribute and submit PRs. The thing is, it's very well tested. Most of the GitHub projects that I try to do is like try to get as much test coverage as I can so that I'm not struggling uphill dealing with bugs. So it's very well tested. There is probably issues that come in once in a while or feature requests that come in. And yeah, I love working with it, but for the most part, it doesn't take a lot of work. I guess the biggest challenge I have is spending time documenting it. So there is Examine documentation, and there's a bunch of sections that say to do. So if anyone wants to help with that would be amazing. And it's really mostly just a copy and paste of the Fluent API tests. So if you want to get involved in the Examine project, documentation definitely could use any sort of help or upgrade, and it's super easy to get involved. But
so if you use it, if you use Examine, then help.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And that would go a long way to helping people like discover more features and how to use it and deep dives. Like I know Umbraco offers Examine courses, and I feel like that's the best way to learn Examine because maybe the documentation is slightly lacking.
For now. But.
Yes. All right. That concludes the Q&A session. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for staying. And let's give our speakers, Shannon, Suzanne, and Dave, another round of applause.